In this video, you're going to learn about a job that you can do in the comfort of your home that you've definitely heard of, but you might not know much about. This interview with Dave, whose last name is French, so I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I will butcher it. We talk about how to start voice acting with no experience. He shares where to get started, how to get started, where you can find jobs, how much you can be expected to pay. Just some real gold nuggets in there for anyone who has been contemplating this industry, making money online from the comfort of home. Check it out. And thank you, Dave, for joining us here on the Love Work at Home YouTube channel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I'm really good. The first question I have for you is, can you just give us a bit of a background, a bit of information about your background in voice acting, how it all started for you and your history with it?
Certainly. Well, I'm a TV news announcer, and I thought along the way that when that runs out, I better have a backup plan. And I thought, well, voice acting, how hard can that be after I've been a TV news announcer for so long? And it turned out to be a blessing and a curse in that sense. There are some things that carry over, but mostly voice actors look down upon news announcers. So I've had to kind of get over that cadence, that news cadence that's so common among newscasters.
Okay, it's probably better it wasn't the other way though.
Right, right.
Harder being a broadcaster, feeling that voice actors are a lower level and then going into the industry.
Right. Well, there certainly is a lot that I understood about the business, having been in, because most of the great jobs are in TV spots, TV commercials and radio commercials and TV promo work, movie promo work. So I kind of understood that whole business as a general sense. Yeah, that's kind of where I got started with it.
Okay. And how many years have you been in both TV broadcasting and voice acting?
Yeah, I've been doing both since 2007. I quit TV in 2017, and that lasted for about a year and a half. And now I'm back at it and doing voiceover still on the side. I think what you'll find is most voice actors, I'd really say the preponderance of voice actors have a regular job and then they do this on the side. There are just a handful of voice actors that make enough money at it to actually support their families and pay all their bills.
Fantastic. That's a great insight, actually. Yeah, that's good. And what you mentioned before, some of the things that you've done voice acting for.
Right. There's just a whole mess of different genres. I started in audiobooks, which I really enjoyed. Real artistic and creative challenge, but it's a lot of work and it doesn't pay well.
Right.
So also I regularly audition for commercials, for e-learning, for corporate, for what they would call explainer videos. There's news promos, there's movie promos, video games, animation. It goes on and on and on.
Okay, right. That's really interesting. I'll pick your brain a little bit further about where to actually find the work. But as this video is titled, let me just double check. Yeah, how to start voice acting with no experience. So, you've been there, you've had no experience, you've carved out a name in the industry. And so what's your advice for someone who wants to get started with, from scratch?
Right. Most people rush in thinking they can have a laptop and a USB mic, and pretty soon the sacks of money start arriving at their door. It is much more of a marathon than a sprint.
Yeah.
You'd need to do your due diligence. You need to have a mentor. You'd need to hang out in voiceover groups online and Facebook and such. Start asking questions, find out what people are getting paid for their jobs, because a lot of people have gone before and have, paved the way for pretty good pay rates. And if you jump in on Fiverr or some of these other online casting sites and accept $5 for a 30-second commercial, then you're really dumbing down the pay scale. So do your due diligence, find a mentor, ask a lot of questions, buy some fairly decent equipment. I can set up a pretty good voiceover studio for 500 American dollars. I
Right.
think it's more important to create a good recording environment, the place where you record, be it a converted closet or a whisper room that you make yourself. Either way, the acoustics have to sound good, and then the mic sounds so much better in that kind of a room. Uh, so, yeah, it's not something you just rush into and start making a lot of money right away, unless you get really lucky or you're extremely well talented.
Yep. Okay. I'm one that is big on, if I want to go into something new, as I did, my background is structural engineering, but I started down the path of YouTube and blogging and affiliate marketing, and I just had no idea. So I've always been a big proponent of finding a great course or some, upskilling and educating on that. Now I see that you've got a book. It's in its second edition now, which you mentioned before this video is probably a great place to start for beginners. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in there, some of the key things that are in there?
Certainly. It's very common that I get a phone call from a perfect stranger who has a great voice. Well, my name's Bob, and everybody tells me I should be in radio. And
Yeah.
how do I get started in voiceover?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to gently tell them that a good talent, or great pipes, so to speak, are about 20% of the success formula for voiceover. The other 80%, as you would appreciate, is a good business sense. And so I wrote a book with a title, More Than Just a Voice, the real reason for success in voiceover. And that's being a good business person, a good freelance business person, because it's going to take a lot of hustle,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of initiative, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of chutzpah, as it were, to really know how to market yourself.
Okay. And once someone is marketing themselves, where should they be? Some hot tips on where they should be marketing themselves. You mentioned Fiverr a second ago, cheap gigs there.
Mm-hmm.
Some other people might be earning some better money elsewhere. Where are some places that beginners can go to just get started?
Right. I'm going to try to be really brief here because I could go on and on about this. There are online casting sites, and they're not going to go away. And that's maybe a place you could cut your teeth, but it's what we would call a cattle call, because you're bidding against possibly hundreds of other talent for one job. So really the best jobs are the ones you can find yourself. For instance, I do a lot of e-learning, which is a corporate approach. You would start just doing a warm search. You do your research for those companies that might be looking for a voice for their e-learning courses. And it takes some hunting and pecking, but you can do well that way. I think the best jobs are the ones you find yourself. Now, in the United States, there's also talent agents that you can bring into your fold, and they'll find work for you and send. Those are really some of the best jobs, but they're also highly competitive. And there are managers in this business that do some of that as well. But again, I would like to stress the best jobs are the ones you can find yourself, because you're the only person competing for that job at that point.
Yep. Can you recollect going back to 2017, 2018, when you were finding some of your own projects? Where were they coming from? How did you find them? Where?
Right. A lot of them were referrals from friends who wanted to help me get started. But again, they were mostly corporate sources. And that can be also educational institutions, companies, or, oh golly, I'm trying to think back, that are just looking for a voice. They are really the best customers too, because they're not so much wrapped up in the Hollywood or the entertainment business, and so they're more solid customers. They appreciate you if you're consistent and stay in touch and do good work and stay on target with the deadline, and they'll come back and they'll refer you to other people. So all in all, that word of mouth marketing with corporate customers works very well. Now, with audiobooks, which is where I started, there are a number of publishing houses that recruit and hire voice talent. And that again is pretty competitive too. A lot of those people are looking for people with a theater background. And of course, I had a news background, so I had to kind of fight my way into that. But again, audiobooks are a lot of fun to do, and they can be very challenging. but it takes, say, a 70,000 word book takes 3 to 4 weeks to record. And every day you've got to approach that microphone with a very consistent attitude. You got to keep that same pace, that same voice tone
Yeah.
every day, day after
Yeah.
day. It's a real challenge.
I've wondered how that's done because I've listened to some 8-hour books, and I mean, when I go to bed at night and read, I'm like 2 pages in before some Z's are coming out. So I don't know how they do it. And every now and then I do notice a bit of a change in tone. I go,
Right.
that's probably where they had a break, or, something like that. And, but then you get back into the book and you forget about it. But yeah, I take my hat off to people who do that, because there's some skill in that.
It is a challenge. Yeah.
Yep, yep. I also saw on your blog, I'm pretty sure it was your blog, a setup you mentioned before, a setup in a wardrobe, literally, suits pushed out of the
Right.
way, a little
Yep.
box put in there, maybe
Exactly.
some pillows and stuff, microphone. It's unconventional, but super conventional at the same time.
So yeah, the idea is to eliminate not only outside noises coming in, which is probably the hardest, but also any kind of ricochet or bouncing off of sound waves inside your recording environment, because that makes it hollow and echoey. And it doesn't take a lot. If you're familiar with luggage padding, sheets that you might get from a moving company, blankets. If they're hung the right way or arranged correctly with a tight enough space around you, they're excellent sound dampening sources. And you set up inside of that with a chair and a table and a microphone stand and a little light and maybe a music stand in front of you to put your copy, and you're set.
Wow, that's it. It's great because a lot of people, this video is for the beginners, and one of the biggest barriers would be, I don't have the equipment. That's going to cost a whole bunch. Well, you said you could do it for about $500. You can do it in your wardrobe. It's not a huge hurdle.
Yeah, I think most talent at some point think that the more equipment they buy or the better equipment they buy, the better they'll sound. And there's only a point of diminishing returns with that. I'd say it's $200 to $300 microphone, a laptop, maybe a nice preamp, and you're set. You're ready to go. It's around $500 for a fairly decent setup like that. So it's not terribly expensive.
That's great. And speaking of money, can you give us some indicative figures on how much you feel someone can make in this industry? You mentioned, it's probably for a lot of people, it's more suited as a bit of a side hustle, earn some extra side income.
Yeah.
Other people make it a full-time gig. So yeah, can you give us any insights into what people can make?
There's a great debate about that in this country, because a lot of people are selling themselves out and grabbing jobs for a mere pittance, where a good talent would probably charge a lot more for that. And so customers are being dumbed down to expect to have to pay less and less. And so it is getting more competitive. Just to give you an example, so for let's say an audiobook, I would expect to get $350 to $500 per finished hour. So finished hour includes narrating it, then going back and editing, the stomach gurgles and the mouth clicks out of that. So an hour of narration ends up being probably 2 to 3 hours finished. And I'm only going to get $350 to $500 per hour. It's a lot of work. And then commercials can be, commercials can go anywhere from usually 30 to 60 second spots. A 30 would go for anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. A 60-second commercial can go up to $20,000 if you find the right client, and it all depends on usage and how long it'll be used, where it'll be used geographically. There's some variables there. Matters whether you're a union or not. So there's a few variables, but it can be very lucrative. There's no question, but it also is very competitive.
Yep. Okay. And you have carved out quite a name for yourself in the industry. You've got a great website. How can people find you and that book that I mentioned before?
My last name is really long, so I've more or less abbreviated it for branding purposes to Courvo, V as in Victor, O, and that ends in VO, which means voiceover. So Courvo, Courvoisier.com is really my website. You found it pretty easily, and that's what I use as my branding is Courvo.com. And my book is there for sale. My blog is there. My demos are there.
Yeah.
Happy to work for you if you want a neutral U.S. accent. And it's also a global community. There's a lot of work available all across the globe. I've got clients in the Pacific Rim as well as in Europe.
Yeah.
So there's a need for all languages, all accents, all types of voices.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've thought many times, to be perfectly honest, having an Australian accent, and
Oh, yeah.
a lot of my audience, or the majority of my audience for both blog and YouTube channel is in the States. And I'm, in the back of my mind, one of my limiting beliefs is, does the Australian accent throw people off? Does it do me an injustice? Oh, drama.
Actually, there's a pretty good market for it. British accents too, of course. And, America is becoming a little more accepting of different languages and accents. And it used to be strictly English, but it is, it's developing. So go for it.
That's good. All right. The information, Dave's website and the link to where you can find his book will be in the description below. So please go down and check that. Thank you very much for your time, Dave.
Of course.
Have a great evening, and we'll chat again sometime.
All right. Thank you, Rowan.
Okay, bye. I hope you got something out of that, Dave. Great guy. Fantastic chat. As I said a second ago, the link to his website is down below. If you got something out of that, by all means, share it with someone you know. Like, share, comment, all that amazing stuff. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye.